Spill another drop and you're gone. The threat slid across the study like a blade. Maria's sleeve slipped. Purple rings flashed on her wrist. She yanked the fabric down. Lorenzo didn't raise his voice. He never had to. Sit. She froze. By nightfall, the man who did this would learn what it cost to touch someone under the wrong roof. White light hummed above polished wood. Chicago glittered beyond glass, but the study held its own weather, quiet, heavy, watching. Lorenzo Duca read a column of numbers most men would ignore and found a tremor of deceit in the ink. That was his gift, noticing what other people taught themselves not to see. Maria stepped in with the espresso. Petite, precise, sleeve pulled too far. She set the cup down with both hands, careful as if the porcelain had a heartbeat. The fabric slid. 2 inches. Enough. Rings of purple caught the light like bad jewelry. Older yellow bruises braided beneath them. She jerked the sleeve down. Her breath hitched. Sit, he said. It wasn't loud. It never needed to be. She eased into the leather like she meant to disappear inside it. What happened to your wrists? Clumsy, she said. The word broke like glass in her mouth. Both? Silence answered first, then a practiced laugh that did not belong to a happy person. She pulled the other sleeve. Finger marks. Recent. Something cold settled in his chest. He had done dark things. He had made choices that kept him awake. But some lines made a man simple again. Protect. Punish. Put the world back where it belonged. Who? Nobody. Maria. He leaned forward, elbows to desk, voice even. You work under my roof. That means you are under my protection. Do you understand me? Her eyes searched him like a hand groping for a light switch in a strange room. Words gathered, then fled. She stood too fast, rattled thanks, and retreated. He watched the door close. Then he called the only person allowed to scold him. Patricia, now. Mrs. Chun arrived with the weathered calm of 30 years. He described what he'd seen. She went pale, then furious, then useful. She keeps to herself, Patricia said. Divorced, with her sister for now. Find where she goes after work, Lorenzo said. Not you, Marco or Tony. Quiet. Ex-husband? We'll know by noon. He set the mansion's eyes to work. Gate angles, street corners, bus stops, the city's indifferent intersections. He asked for 2 weeks of sky and pavement. Meanwhile, the study turned into a promise. He tapped a finger against the desk. Once. Judgment. Scheduled. By noon, the file arrived. A face in blue wool. A badge. A smile that didn't climb into the eyes. Derek Mitchell. Domestic calls. A restraining order that died 3 weeks back. An uncle with stars on his shoulder and friends in rooms where other people whisper. The kind of man who learns every loophole because loopholes are the only law he trusts. Lorenzo closed the folder without sound. Watch the bus stop. Evening brought the first tape. A blue sedan idling, sunglasses at dusk, a woman shrinking herself to fit inside fear. The car didn't touch her. It didn't have to. It taught her lessons with a clock. Intimidation, Marco said. Terror, Lorenzo answered. He didn't pour a drink. He didn't pray. He made a list. By sunrise, the list had a name at the top and a promise under it. No one touches my people. The bus stop 3 blocks down had a glass shelter and a habit of pretending not to notice things. It learned, because the city teaches. 11 days back, Maria waiting, fingers white on a strap. The blue sedan slid to the curb. A uniform stepped out like ownership. She turned, fast. He caught the wrist, spun her. Mouths moved. The grip left those rings he'd seen. 90 seconds. A lifetime. Rain day, another angle. Her umbrella sprinted, his body blocked. Jabs close to her face. The bus hissed up like a rescue animal. She slipped aboard. He watched the doors close on what he believed. Yesterday. The gate. No car this time. Footfalls. a cornered animal where the iron met her shoulder blades, hands on the collarbones, a palm at her throat, not squeezing, just teaching. An old man with a dog broke the spell. The smile Derek wore for strangers didn't have the teeth he saved for her. "Turn it off," Lorenzo said. They did. He stood in that humming room and let the anger cool until it could think. The badge protected Derek. The uncle protected the badge. The brotherhood protected the myth of both. Fine. Protect each other. He would not strike the man. He would strike the armor. Everything, he told Tony. Where he sleeps, where he boasts, where the cash that doesn't exist becomes rent he can't afford. Understood. Surveillance stays, he told Marco. Every shadow, every pass, every stop. Timestamps like nails. And Maria? Patricia asked, voice a thread pulled tight. Nothing changes for her, he said. Routine is safer than fear that moves too fast. He found her later with a duster and a jaw working to keep tears from their job. He asked her to his office. She shook all the way there. He lowered himself to her height as if gravity could be kind. "Who's hurting you?" "Nobody." He named Derek. The word cracked her. What poured out wasn't noise. It was a ledger. Restraining order denied. Doors watched at 2 a.m. A station that called him a good officer, while she learned what walls sound like when someone leans on them from the outside. "Who do you call?" she asked. "When the person hurting you wears a badge." "Me," he said. "You can't fight the police." "I'm not fighting the police," he said. "I am unteaching a man who learned the wrong lesson about power." He slid a card across the desk. "If you feel unsafe, call. No questions first. Help first." "Why?" She whispered. "I'm just a maid." He didn't say, "No one is just." He said, "Because you are under my roof. Because what he is doing is wrong. Because on my watch, wrong pays." When she left, the fear was still there. But it had a company now, something shy and difficult. Hope is heavier than people think. It changes the way a person stands. The list on his desk had grown. IA. Ledger. Friends who want him clean. Friends who want him gone. Each word was a door. He started opening them. Internal affairs doesn't move for feelings. It moves for patterns that embarrass institutions. Patterns can be made to speak. Morning. Ryan Webb reached the parking lot with a coffee and left it untouched in an interview room. The timeline on the table remembered exact cash, exact stops, exact nights. Sweat did what it does. By lunch, Ryan edited his loyalty into a statement. First domino, a text read, "Webb is singing." Afternoon, packages slipped into places where sunlight makes trouble. Whistleblower sites, accountability threads, inboxes with names that like sharp stories. The posts didn't shout. They asked questions with receipts attached, unexplained deposits, patio beers with men whose business stains map into case files, complaints that learned how to disappear. By night, upvotes turned into calls into, "We're looking into it." 2 reporters traded links like contraband. A producer circled phrases with a finger. The day ended a little less quiet than it started. Wednesday. A federal door opened on a man named Kowalski. Boxes, weight, plastic, codes. The math said years. Derek lost 2 things at once, cash that pretended to be clean and muscle that pretended to be friends. He threw his phone. It became parts on a floor. The uncle texted a time. The word desk arrived with it. No badge, no patrol, a uniform without the power it believed it gave. In Lorenzo's house, the study turned into a war room. Not loud. Maps that looked like calendars. Names that looked like sentences waiting for verbs. Patricia stood in the doorway and measured the cost. "He'll lash out," Frank said, voice made of cautions that had saved them for decades. "Then we'll be faster," Lorenzo answered. "Faster gets messy." "Not if the mess belongs to him." Marco pulled new footage. Derek parked across from Maria's building for 3 hours, learning patience he didn't earn. The screen's blue glow made a vow inside the room. "Now," Lorenzo said. Frank's mouth tightened. "Phase 3. Phase 3, Lorenzo said. "Make the city know his name the way Maria knows it." "How far?" "Far enough that anyone who touches him gets the stain on their hand." They moved like chess. Lorenzo called a prosecutor he'd shaken hands with at a gala and never owed. He didn't ask favors that left fingerprints. He pointed at places where truth would be waiting if someone opened the right door. He did not touch Derek. He touched everything that made Derek feel untouchable. At night, the city stacked its lights. Maria read the card he'd given her 3 times before sleep let her try. Outside, a car passed and didn't stop. Sometimes survival is learning the difference between a sound that means danger and a sound that means not tonight. She slept through one of them for the first time in months. In the morning, the news used his name with a question mark. Questions are knives with manners. They still cut. Lorenzo stood at the window and watched the river move like a secret no one could arrest. "Keep building," he told them. "Then let gravity help." Desk duty fits badly on men who confuse a badge with a personality. Derek wore it like an insult. The department wore him like a problem they wished belonged to someone else. IA widened. Colleagues thinned. The word transfer started to bloom on forms that didn't used to smell like fear. In group texts, blue hearts turned into 3 dots that never became messages. Money told its own version. Deposits that arrived on days that matched stops where drivers remembered roadside generosity, dinners that cost more than his paycheck, a car that suggests arithmetic should be illegal. The network map Marco drew looked like a spider had learned police names. Some threads snapped when IA tugged. Others tried to pretend they were cobwebs and not rope. "What about the uncle?" Lorenzo asked. "Public distance," Tony said. "Private fury." "Good," Frank said. "Make sure the fury finds something else to stand on." Lorenzo nodded. "Victims," he said. "Find the others." They did what men in quiet wars do, called numbers that didn't want to be called, knocked on doors in apartment halls that smelled like old paint, paid in respect and silence for stories that had been punished for trying to speak. Some said no. Enough said yes. A pattern learned how to introduce itself without help. Media bites grew teeth. One segment used the phrase "Chicago's dirty cop problem." Another used domestic complaints dismissed. The department's spokesperson said things about ongoing investigations and the importance of process. Process stared back like a mirror nobody had cleaned in years. At the mansion, Patricia met Maria in the corridor with tea in hands that knew how to hold a shaking one without making the shaking worse. "You're not alone," she said. "I feel like I'm making a city angry," Maria whispered. "You didn't make him cruel," Patricia said. "You're making him seen." Derek's car idled outside Maria's building again. He stared at windows like windows owed him their view. He took notes on a pad like he was doing a job and not a ritual. The engine burred. The night thickened. No one came out. Nothing happened. Sometimes that's how a trap sets itself. With nothing. Lorenzo took one last look at the board. Phase 1 had cracked the reputation. Phase 2 had invited process to the feast. Phase 3 would take the utensils away from anyone who tried to help Derek eat. "Move," he said. Files traveled where they needed to. A union rep found himself staring at a set of dates that made him decide not to answer a call. A councilwoman's aide forwarded an email to a journalist by accident. A captain decided tomorrow was a good day to remember the meaning of duty to intervene. None of it touched Derek. All of it touched the air around him. Air carries sound. Sound carries truth when you turn up the room. Cornered men do math wrong. Derek tried to subtract exposure with fury and ended up adding witnesses. He parked across from the mansion's side gate again, the pen digging a groove into the pad. He didn't see the old man with the dog this time. He didn't see the two conversations he wasn't part of. One between a journalist and a producer about going live at 6, another between IA and a federal office about a warehouse, a car, a friend named Jimmy, and a trail that looked like greed walking in daylight. Inside the mansion, Marco's feeds stitched the corridors of Maria's day into a quiet movie. Shelves dusted, linens folded, pauses taken at doorways to listen for a car that might as well have a password. Patricia placed a card in Maria's palm. Another number, another net. Maria nodded as if nodding could keep hands from shaking later. Tony laid the next pieces on the table. Bookies. Side hustle. A partner who sings like he wants Sundays back. Frank circled a date. This one, he said. Make sure what happens here happens where people can see it without us in the picture. Evening brought the thing fear had been promising. Derek wasn't in the car, he was on foot. Maria reached the gate. He came around the corner the way weather does. Sudden, unapologetic. Her back met iron. His body taught a lesson he thought he had tenure for. Palms on shoulders, the old threat near the throat. Words he believed could reshape a life. He didn't see what the gate saw. 2 blocks over, a camera on a storefront learned new work. Across the street, a tenant adjusting a blinds cord found a phone. At the corner, a cyclist stopped like traffic had a conscience. The old man with the dog arrived late but arrived. When Derek stepped back, he wore the polite face again. The one that fooled people who like uniforms more than they like women. He walked away with the posture of a man whose uncle could fix things. Maria slid to the sidewalk and learned a new sound her chest could make when it had wept too long. Enough, Lorenzo said when he watched it. There was no heat in the word, only weather. The morning after, the sun climbed with someone else's schedule. IA's knock didn't ask to come in. A box on a desk filled with personal items belongs to a man who remembers other men's boxes and has learned nothing. Derek was told about administrative leave. He heard betrayal. He blamed Webb. He blamed Maria. He blamed a city that had finally decided to treat a pattern like a pattern. He didn't blame the quiet man whose name he didn't know. People like Derek don't look for the person who moves gravity. They shout at the floor. Lorenzo watched the room breathe. One more door, he said. The public one. Frank nodded. Careful. Always, Lorenzo said, and meant it. The city learned a name at dinner. Not from a whisper, from a lower third banner that married it to numbers and faces. Reporters spoke like scalpels. Deposits no salary could justify. A friend in cuffs. Complaints that found a trash can instead of a file. Viewers did the math people always could have done. Belief shifted in its chair. At the district, silence spread. The uncle stood apart, a monument to distance. Loyalty peeled like old paint. A union rep talked about process with a tone that meant, don't call me. A captain rediscovered his pen and wrote duty where avoidance used to live. IA scheduled the hearing. They scheduled witnesses. They scheduled a room for a man's certainty to learn how to sit down. Patricia sat with Maria in a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Breathe, she said. When they ask, tell the truth you can bear. The rest can wait. Maria nodded. She did not think of iron gates. She thought of a blue card with a number on it, and a voice that had said, help first. Derek walked in without the uniform. He looked smaller in plain clothes. Not less dangerous, just less practiced at pretending it wasn't there. He glanced at the door, the corners, the ceiling like a man who had always believed rooms belonged to him and had never learned how to be a guest. The questions were not dramatic. They were rectangular like forms. They asked when and how, and why does your bank say, and who is the man in this photo? He answered like a person trying to barter with hours. Then came the screens. Not edited, not loud. Bus stops, rain, hands where hands had no right to be. A gate, a sidewalk, tears, a stranger's dog pausing at exactly the moment decency should. No one clapped. Rooms that do justice correctly don't clap. They breathe. A decision was read in a voice that had read other decisions and would read others tomorrow. Administrative leave moved to suspension. Badge surrendered. Gun surrendered. Internal charges stacked. Referral outbound. The uncle stared at a wall because walls don't ask questions you can fail. Outside, microphones waited. Words like accountability and pattern drifted into the air and found places to land. Some were sincere, some were shielding. The world works the way it does. But today, it worked enough. Maria didn't stay for the cameras. She walked past them with Patricia's hand on her arm and sunlight lying honest across the steps. The city felt different by half a degree. Lorenzo watched from a distance that safety requires. He didn't smile. He allowed himself one breath that went deeper than the others. "Is it over?" Patricia asked later. "Over is a luxury," he said. "Safe is enough." Maria slept that night and didn't wake at the sound of a car idling 2 blocks away. Somewhere, a cyclist rolled through a green light and didn't know he had ever mattered. Somewhere, an old man walked a dog that needed less time to sniff the same tree as yesterday. Lorenzo's list on the desk had only one word left: aftercare. He underlined it. On his watch, fear would learn new habits. And in a city that forgives what it shouldn't, someone learned you cannot wear a badge over rot and expect rain to bless it.